One of the biggest questions you're going to be asking yourself when you first start is my idea any good? A lot of founders either don't think about this question enough and their business fails, or they think about it too much and they never start. So today I am taking 3 business ideas from real founders, and we're going to take a look at what's good about them, where there's some potential risks or problems, and how exactly these founders can bring their ideas to life. Our first founder today wants to make a series of digital tools to support women in the time after giving birth, before all of the support kicks in, where women can often feel quite vulnerable and it's very overwhelming. So when I look at a new business idea, I generally try and break it down into 3 fundamental components: who the founder is, who the target is, and what the offer or the product is. So the reason I look at founders first is because an idea is only as good as your ability to execute on it. Typically, the founders who succeed are the ones that either experience the problem personally or they're coming from a professional background. So taking a look at this founder, she actually ticks 2 of those boxes. She is a clinical midwife working professionally in the industry, and she's also told me that she has personal experience with the problem that she's trying to solve. So because of those, I think she's really well positioned to actually execute on this. And even though she's looking at building a tech business and she may not have the technical side, what she does have in droves is that customer experience and understanding the problem, which honestly is more important than the technical acumen these days. Next, we're going to look at the customer. When I look at the customer, I'm looking for a few things. Do they actually have a problem? Is the problem urgent? Do they have the money to pay to fix the problem? And do they have the authority to spend that money? This is where it gets interesting, because the problem absolutely exists. I personally have experienced this myself. However, I've written down urgency and I've put an exclamation mark in it, because when they're experiencing the problem, they're overwhelmed. So what you then have to look at is this something that I can introduce to women when they're pregnant? Now the challenge with doing that then becomes they don't know they have the problem yet. The other thing I've put an exclamation mark next to is money. You're competing with free apps and a very crowded pregnancy spending window. Okay, so now that we've actually flagged urgency and money as the potential barriers for this product, let's look at how we can solve it. This idea will make and break on your distribution strategy, how you are getting in front of these women. If you only get one shot in a woman's life for them to buy this product, you want to make sure that every single time a woman gives birth, they are aware of your product. This is actually a really good example of why the founder, having that background as a clinical midwife, she will know, is it something that you could actually build up a network of midwives who will recommend you download and install this app. So let's talk about the product itself. The only information this founder has given me is digital tools to support women after birth. What we're looking for in an offer is something that's unique. It's that it is sticky. So that means customers, they start using it, ideally never go off it, or they keep coming back to buy it over and over again. We want it to be high margin, and whether or not this thing can scale. In this instance, the one out of all of these that really worries me is the stickiness. There are a lot of once-off purchase businesses that do okay, but those businesses then become customer acquisition businesses, because if your customers aren't coming back all the time and buying over and over again, what that means is that your job is now getting new customers who come in, make the purchase, walk out the door. So now I've essentially looked at the broad idea. What would my MVP or my next steps be if I were this founder? For this business, I would throw together a website with the information that a midwife would need. I would make it really clearly articulate the value and the benefits that your product could bring to new mums. This should take you like a day or 2 tops. I'd use probably something like Card. Like you could even use the free Card website, because it's really simple, so you can't spend too much time overthinking it. I would then talk to every midwife I can. On my first round of midwives, I'd try 5 midwives first, and my goal would be to get at least 2 of them to say, yes, this is needed, I'd definitely recommend it. You're trying to get the yes, but if you can't get the yes, you're really trying to understand why. And then I would go back and look at my website, which bits were they not sold on or which bits are missing. I would change that and then go back to another 5. And I would keep doing this until I started getting 4 out of every 5 midwives saying, absolutely, we need this. When can I recommend it? As soon as you hit that point, that's when you build it, because at that point, you know exactly what the product needs to have. in order to satisfy your distribution strategy. On that note, if you're enjoying today's video and you're getting any value out of it, please like and subscribe. I love doing these videos. I want to do more. So if you are building something or just in it for the kicks, please like and subscribe. All right, so the next idea is from another female founder. This one is an AI-driven safeguarding platform designed to prevent child exploitation before it happens. Let's start off with the founder. Now, this founder is one of my favorite kind of people. If you've ever read the book Range, you'll understand why. She has a pretty broad background, which hints at someone very resourceful. The only one that directly tracks to the business idea is the Masters of Cybersecurity. But when you're a founder, you're not just building out your idea, you're building a business, right? So having such a broad background in a founder can be quite powerful. Founder aside, let's look at the customers. So she is targeting B2B, which is always a good place to be, especially if you're trying to raise money or get venture capital at some point. So let's start with the customer problem. The founder has identified that background checks only look at past behavior. They don't look at some of the more insidious indicators, things like online predatory behavior or patterns. So that's the pitch deck version of the problem, right? But the actual customer problem is a whole lot simpler. So this isn't just a child protection problem, it's the far more cold and heartless version of this is a business risk, this is a compliance issue, this is a trust and revenue risk. When I'm looking at the customer problem here, I think the real risk point for this idea is whether or not the customer will actually pay. The checks that these organizations do are generally legally mandated, so they are going to spend money on them because they have to. But if you're introducing a premium layer on top of these checks and your price goes up, you're asking them to go beyond their minimum compliance requirements. What you have to prove in that instance is the minimum not enough? Do the companies feel exposed? Is there a legitimate business risk there for the companies? And even if there is, do they have the budget to spend on more? So here's how I'd validate this customer problem. I would find 100 organizations and find the person in that business whose job it is to manage these checks. And I would ask them 2 questions. First of all, I'd ask them, why do you run these checks? Their answer is probably going to be one of 3 things. It's a legal requirement, it's an insurance thing, or it's a values-driven thing, something like we protect children. It's our mission to look after children. Once you've gotten the answer on that question, you want to follow it up then as well as what is their budget? So that will set your pricing anchor for whatever product you end up putting out. If their answer was that they do it because of their values, that's really good because you can then sell them on protection and the benefit that your software gives them above all else. But if their answer was that it is a legal or insurance thing, what that generally means is you now have to compete on price with all of those background checks that don't have the premium layer. So putting that aside, let's talk about the product itself. This founder has specified that this is an AI-driven product. In order to be an AI company, you have to be a data company first. So there's going to be some definite challenges here because a lot of the behaviors that were mentioned, those grooming behaviors and predatory patterns, they don't happen in public spaces, they happen in private messages. The product question isn't anything to do with AI and how to build AI, it's actually how do I get that data in a legal and ethical way. I would spend a week identifying which signals are the best indicators that I'm looking for, and then I would look at, okay, where does that data sit and how do I get access to it? That is a big problem that you will need to solve in order for this to be a viable business. Your MVP doesn't have much to do with AI, it's actually what is the smallest set of indicators that I can get the data for and do it ethically and at scale. If you can come out of this knowing that businesses are making this decision based on values and wanting the protection of their children, and if you can get high quality, legally compliant data, you're in a really solid position then. Alrighty, so my third one today is a B2C product. This is a private storytelling platform to help people capture their life stories through simple guided conversations. Let's talk about the founder first. She has a strong background in sales, which is always a desperately needed skill in startups. I actually quite like this connection too, because something that comes across in sales and marketing a lot is this idea of storytelling and engaging people on a journey. I've heard this referred to as crabbing, where you sort of move sideways and you take all the skills you have from your profession and you build a business around that, which is pretty cool. So let's talk about the customer. She talked about a lot of the features and things that will make this a nice tool to use, but what the actual customer is experiencing that makes them want to buy this has not been articulated yet. This is a trickier one to do in things that fall into that hobby space. We're looking at a reason why these people would buy, and more importantly, why they would buy now. When you talk about recording stories, you start to tap into things like legacy, memoir, self-identity. And so for your early customers, niche down. Find a really specific use case for this and just capture that part of the market. So to give you an idea, I'll talk about the physical journals, because in the physical journal space, right now you can see a lot of like journals for ADHD. So they're taking something that is a universal problem, as in a notebook, but they're making it really specific to one subset of the market and making sure that market understands the value. I would do the same with this. I would start off with a very specific niche. Now, what that niche is, I'm not sure. You want something that is going to have that degree of urgency about it. So the reason the ADHD notebooks take off is because people are getting more ADHD diagnosis and they're looking for tools and mechanisms to deal with that. So similarly with this, the sort of thing you're looking for where that specific group of people have a stronger drive than normal that's going to motivate them to record these stories or to use this tool. A pretty safe bet is anyone going through a life milestone. For example, the new kid market is pretty heavily saturated, but what about things like first year of marriage or just bought a house, or those life milestones that aren't necessarily overly commoditized? If I was this founder, I would absolutely start there. I would find a niche within the market that I can really position myself around for the early prototype. The next biggest opportunity for this particular idea is how to make it really sticky, because you could do a version of this that is like, I'm going to put my stories together and give it as a Christmas gift to my grandkids, which is great. But once they've done that, that's a project, they've done it for a period of time, and then they never touch it again. And you're into that same situation I was talking about with the previous founder, where you're just having to constantly acquire new customers. So what you really want with a storytelling platform like this is something that people start to embed in their life as an end-of-day routine or that sort of thing. Customers stay with you longer, they pay more, and they feel more brand loyalty, because what you're giving them is an endless, constantly updating thing rather than a once-off project that becomes homework. So what I like to usually do is say next steps. And now for this founder, actually building the product's not the tricky part. It's working out how to present it to customers and find those customers that are in the right spot in their life. So in terms of the next steps for this founder, I would start doing a whole bunch of research to really dial into what your target audience looks like, what is prompting them in their life to take this step, and find the ones that have that urgency. So all the ideas we've covered today have got really good bones and really good potential if they're tackled in the right way. Now, if you're a founder in a similar boat and you have an idea that you'd like me to review, drop it in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. I'm also putting out a series of videos on how to actually execute these validation and MVP steps, and I will catch you in the next one.